You've been clear since really January 6th itself that he bears responsibility. Have these hearings demonstrated that Donald Trump needs to be prosecuted?
Ultimately, the Justice Department will decide that. I think we may well, as a committee, have a view on that. If you just think about it from the perspective of what kind of man knows that a mob is armed and sends the mob to attack the Capitol and further incites that mob when his own vice president is under threat, when the Congress is under threat. It's very chilling. And I think certainly we will, continue to present to the American people what we found.
So the committee will or will not make a criminal referral?
We'll make a decision as a committee about it.
So it's possible there will be a criminal referral, which
yes.
would be effectively the committee saying that he should be prosecuted, and this is the evidence that we've uncovered.
The Justice Department doesn't have to wait for the committee to make a criminal referral. And there could be more than one criminal referral.
Are you worried about what that means for the country to see a former president prosecuted, a former president who is a likely candidate, who may in fact be running for president against Biden? It would be Biden's Justice Department. It would be prosecuting.
I have greater concern about what it would mean if people weren't held accountable for what's happened here. I think it's a much graver constitutional threat if a president can engage in these kinds of activities and, the majority of the president's party looks away, or we as a country decide, we're not actually going to take our constitutional obligation seriously. I think that's a much more serious threat.
Here's Liz Cheney discussing the possibility of a criminal referral for Donald Trump. And just so we're clear, as she mentioned, the DOJ doesn't need to wait for a criminal referral to be able to prosecute Donald Trump. The committee will decide one way or the other to give its recommendation because that's the natural conclusion of them conducting their own investigation. But the Justice Department is fully capable of being able to look at the facts gathered in both their own investigation and the investigation from the January 6th committee and recognize that Trump should be prosecuted. But I think the more important point that needs to be raised is this idea that the January 6th committee is taking a risk by targeting Trump, given the fact that he's the likely 2024 Republican nominee for president. John Carl asks whether it's worrisome for the country that Biden's DOJ would be prosecuting Trump while he's running against Biden. And he's not the only person bringing this point up. Here's Margaret Brennan taking the same point against Adam Schiff.
A political calculus to this as well. This is an incredibly divided country right now. Millions of people voted for the former president and still believe wrongly that he won the election. Prosecuting him, isn't there a very high risk to that?
It's certainly not a step to be taken lightly at all. At the same time, immunizing a former president who has engaged in wrongdoing, I would agree with our vice chair, I think is more dangerous than anything else. And the decision not to move forward with an investigation or not to move forward with the prosecution because of someone's political status or political influence or because they have a following, to me, that is a far more dangerous thing to our Constitution than following the evidence wherever it leads, including when it leads to a former president.
And both Cheney and Schiff's answers were spot on. Since when is it wrong to prosecute someone for committing a crime just because the person being prosecuted is a political figure, especially given the fact that the crime itself was political too? Let's not forget that Trump was trying to overturn an election. In other words, Trump can commit a political crime by undermining a free and fair election, inciting a coup, and then trying to install himself as president, but the real issue would be the optics of Biden's DOJ prosecuting Trump because that's what might come across as political. Give me a break. It doesn't matter who Trump is. If he broke the law, which he did, then he should be held accountable for that. To be perfectly honest, even the suggestion by people who, to be clear, are great journalists, that there's any validity to the idea that it's nefarious to pursue Trump's prosecution only feeds the narrative by those bad faith actors on the right who are looking to cling on to anything to protect Trump. And so while John Carl might be asking this question in good faith, it'll eventually make its way to Fox News and Newsmax and OAN, where they'll say, look, even John Carl knows that a Trump prosecution would be political. And it is a sad testament to the state of our politics today, but recognizing how the right is going to twist everything for their own partisan benefit should be a part of the calculus here. And so maybe it's not a great idea to keep asking a question like, are you sure it's a good idea to prosecute Trump, considering it really doesn't take a genius to be able to answer that question. If you break the law, regardless of who you are, you should be prosecuted. prosecuted. And the suggestion that Trump should be above the law because he was president or he may be the Republican nominee in 2024 is just about as antithetical to the Constitution as it gets. But there's one more clip that I think is worth watching here.
Can the Republican Party survive in the way you've known it if Donald Trump is again chosen?
It can't survive if he's our nominee.
No.
No. I think that he can't be the party nominee, and I don't think the party would survive that. I believe in the party, and I believe in what the party can be and what the party can stand for, and I'm not ready to give that up. Those of us who believe in Republican principles and ideals have a responsibility to try to lead the party back to what it can be, and to reject so much of the toxin and the vitriol.
We will stop the steal. We won this election, and we won it by a landslide. This was not a close election.
That millions of people, millions of Republicans, have been betrayed by Donald Trump. And that is a really painful thing for people to recognize and to admit, but it's absolutely the case. And they've been betrayed by him, by the big lie, and by what he continues to do and say to tear apart our country and tear apart our party. And I think we have to reject that.
And so I would just say that those Republicans like Liz Cheney who believe in the Republican Party, the only way to save that party is to ensure that those who espouse Trumpism and the big lie lose. That they suffer enough of a repudiation at the ballot box that the party realizes that Trumpism is a losing strategy. Only when they lose will there be an impetus for change. So I get that you may have been a Republican your whole life. I get that it may be a part of your identity, but the GOP as you knew it doesn't exist. So at this point, recognize that any vote for the GOP as it stands is a vote for Trumpism. If you don't agree with that, which I presume a lot of Republicans don't, then it's your responsibility too to make sure that the people seeking to undermine democracy aren't anywhere near the levers of power. It's not just Democrats who have a responsibility to fight this, it's Americans across the entire political spectrum who support democracy. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on the screen. And to support my work beyond that, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I cover the week's most important stories and interview the biggest players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, and so many more. The link is also right here on this screen. And finally, to take action yourself and sign petitions on the most important issues, go to briantylercohen.com/petition.